It is stupid o'clock here, but I want to talk to you because I love reading, right? We know that by now. And I love video games, and I enjoy doing both together. I love to listen to an audiobook while playing a video game, and I find that there's not many people in that camp and I know it's not for everyone. I know that for some people, listening to an audiobook while playing a video game, those two kind of strands will get muddled together. You might not be following the book, or maybe it'll just become a bit too kind of cognitively taxing and you won't enjoy it. But I really would encourage you to give it a go, because for me at least, it allows me to read a diversity of books that I otherwise wouldn't be able to, and it allows me to get through more pages in the day. Not that that's what it's all about, but, especially at the end of the day, if I've had a really busy day and I really don't want to be kind of staring at a page for a long time, I will listen to an audiobook and play one of the games I'm about to talk to you about. And listen, your mileage will vary, right? You cannot listen to James Joyce's Ulysses or Anna Karenina while playing Mass Effect or The Witcher 3. However, if you pair the right game with the right book, you can have a really great time, and one that you should not have an issue following the story with, or that you kind of give up on the video game. So that's what this video is about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce 5 video games to you that I think pair really nicely with an audiobook. Again, you've got to choose the right book. I've got 2 criteria here. The first criteria is that you should not have to pause the audiobook a lot. That kind of throws out most story-based games. Now, for some of these, you might want to pause the game now and again, or pause the audiobook now and again, but for the vast majority of the time, you should be able to listen and play smoothly. The second criteria is that the video game should kind of be interesting in and of itself, right? It shouldn't just be kind of window dressing for you to listen to this story too. If that's the case, you might as well go jogging or do the dishes or something. So the video game has to be somewhat enjoyable in its own right. With that said, enjoy the list, enjoy the video, please consider subscribing, and let me know what you think. Okay, now at number 1, we have the Lego games. In front of you, what you're seeing is Lego Star Wars. I believe it's called the Complete Saga 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not the one that came out about 2 years ago. It's the one that came out about 20 years ago. It was my first experience with the Lego games, and they are magnificent, and they are such good audio fodder for several reasons. Number 1, there's no dialogue, right? You play these games, or most of them, and you don't have to pause and kind of experience any cutscenes in that way. But regardless, they are just magnificent to play. They're really kind of big on collectibles, so you can spend maybe 10 hours just getting through those campaigns. You can also spend about 100 hours collecting all the characters, doing all the customization stuff, and having a really great time there too. Oh, these games are so amazing. They're colorful, they're bright, they're vibrant, they're not too heavy on the difficulty. I mean, I think when you die in them, you go back about 3 seconds, you lose about 500 of the in-game currency. So you don't have to worry too much about, getting killed and starting over. I did these, actually. This was my first video game that I ever did an audiobook too. When I was about, 14, I played through all of these while listening to the Alex Rider Young Adult series, and I had a fantastic time with it. I really don't think you can go wrong with the Lego games, and I would advise you, if you've never played any of them before, start with Lego Star Wars. It is not dated, even though it is significantly old at this point. You can play these, they're really evergreen. Give them a go. Okay, now, next on the list we have N++, which is the sequel to N+, which is the sequel to N. As you're seeing on the screen in front of you, this is a very simple, basic platformer game. You're a ninja. You're just a wee ninja who runs around, collects some gold, flicks a little switch, and then has to go to his home. There's about 2,000 or 3,000 levels, something bonkers with N++, because the actual, mechanics of it are so simple. It's really worth your time. I believe it's quite cheap as well. I first started playing these games back in the Xbox 360 days, and I've always just kept coming back to them, Stuff like Super Meat Boy, Celeste, I love them, but I'll usually have one playthrough maybe every several years. N++, at some point in the year, I will pick it up, and I will blat through about 200, 300 levels. Sometimes playing the whole thing to completion, sometimes not. The thing is, it gets so difficult on the tail end. It starts off almost, duplicitously easy. But as you get on, this gradual increase in difficulty will leave you hooked. It's a really good audiobook game because these levels really are challenging. When you get to the back end of the game, you will be spending 500, 600, 700 attempts on the same level, which isn't for everyone, but it certainly is for me. So, have an hour of N++, commit to getting through a level, and just enjoying an audiobook at the same time. You cannot go wrong. And another thing, I use that word evergreen for Lego Star Wars. It absolutely applies here too. 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line, there is no reason this game won't hold up in a way that stuff like, LA Noire won't. Regardless of audiobooks, actually, you won't go wrong with this video game. I do encourage you to give it a go. Okay, number 3. Now, first of all, apologies for the absolutely egregious gameplay you're about to see. I love these games, but I'm also not very good at them. You might have heard of a small company called FromSoft. You might have heard of a little game called Elden Ring. I'm sure most of the people watching this, if you are a gamer, you have probably tried these games at least. Let me tell you, they are actually really, really good for audiobooks. Maybe not on the first pass. I'd say the first pass through something like Elden Ring, you want to experience it with its music, trying to figure out the lore, the quests, all that kind of stuff. But certainly on a replay, there is no reason you couldn't listen to an audiobook while playing these games. And the only concern might be the bosses, things like that. But I find personally that when I'm trying to beat these bosses in these really difficult games, I kind of enter almost like a Zen mode. I'll die repeatedly, but I will kind of enter this Zen state where I can listen to something at the same time. Actually, during my last Malazan read-through, I listened to The Crippled God while doing a playthrough of Elden Ring. Worked very well. Similarly, this summer, I was rereading, Oathbringer? Or maybe it was Words of Radiance, one of the Brandon Sanderson books. And I was doing that over audiobook because I was preparing for Wind and Truth. And I spent about 4 playthroughs of Dark Souls just listening to this book. I had a really good time. And I would also extend this opinion, to be honest, beyond just the From Software Souls-like titles to really any Souls-like in this subgenre. Lies of P would work. A Crab's Adventure, another Crab's Adventure, I forget. Those are also games that would work perfectly well with this. Again, you kind of want to make it your second playthrough, not your first, but also it's a good opportunity to do some challenge runs if you really like Souls-likes like I do. An audiobook is a really good way to go there. Listen, I know these games are endlessly popular. They are so good for audiobooks. Trust me, give it a go. I think you'd be surprised by how much mileage you'll have there. Now, moving from the game that probably everybody knows to a game that very few people know, this is Wilderless. This footage was shot on my iPhone. I do also have it on Steam Deck, and it's really great fun. The premise of Wilderless is essentially that you don't have to do anything. There is no purpose to it, so you're free to kind of do whatever you want. It's sort of like a poor man's Breath of the Wild. You've got a randomly generated world, you can walk in any direction, and you can go exploring. It's completely procedurally generated. There are no tasks, there are no quests, there's no big overarching plot. It's kind of part Breath of the Wild, part walking simulator is the way to put it. You can alternate between this character you're seeing right now with a sword, a bow and arrow, kind of going around collecting things. You can also turn into a bird and fly up mountains and stuff, so you can move in a very fast manner, very slow manner, whatever befits you. You can probably already see why this game works so well for an audiobook. It's essentially the video game equivalent of going for a walk. There are dungeons and things like that you can explore. All I tend to do is just choose a path and start walking, and you will find kind of interesting stuff along the way. You might find a ship that you can start to sail. There'll be animals that you can use as mounts. There's lots of fun stuff to do. It is basically just a big playground for you to go walking in. It is a real recommendation from me. And the last, and by absolutely no means least recommendation, is RuneScape, and more specifically, old school RuneScape. Now, I said about LEGO Star Wars that I had played that game on and off to death. I've said the same thing about N++. Both of those games pale in comparison. They really do, to the number of hours I have spent into this game. I think I picked it up when I was about 9-10 years old, then, 13, 14, quietly aged 17 and 18 because I thought it was horribly uncool. Probably should have just embraced it. 21, 22, and all the way to the age I am now. I just cannot stop playing this game every couple of years. I just log back in, maybe start a new account, maybe go with an existing account and just have a bunch of fun. Now, the reason I say old school RuneScape is there's actually a bunch of different RuneScapes, some of which are still available, some of which aren't. You're looking at the one that was started in 2014, which was basically a reset for how the game was when I was younger. This game is notoriously grindy. It's kind of the opposite of what I was talking about with Wilderless. With Wilderless, there's very little you need to do, and there is no leveling up. RuneScape is all about that leveling up. And the fan base kind of embraces that. We're all about going down, knuckling down, spending hours, days, sometimes months of your life, getting a number a little bit higher. That might not be for you, it might be for you. I mean, I know it's not for everyone, but those of us who get into it and love watching the level counter tick up, oh, you have such a good time with RuneScape. And it's an interesting one because I hear people talk about, doing work while playing RuneScape or getting an essay done on the side while playing RuneScape. Whatever your hobby is or whatever your job is, you can do it while playing RuneScape because it's quite hands-off depending on the activity you're doing. But I never really hear anyone talk about reading while playing RuneScape. And actually, for a minute, forget about audiobooks. There are certain activities in RuneScape. You're looking at me fishing right now. You could even have a hardback in front of you and be reading it while you're kind of leveling up your fishing skill. Now listen, it's not just about the grind. The community in this game is fantastic. It's actually a really funny game as well. And there's a really interesting, vibrant world to explore. You don't just have to sit there and click the same thing for 10 hours a day. There are quests and other stuff you can do. But of all the recommendations I've given you so far, I would probably say old school RuneScape would give you the most bang for your buck. It is phenomenal. There's a reason so many of us keep coming back to it.
And that's it for my list. I'll just leave the man fishing in the background. Please let me know what your recommendations are, and let me know if you want to see a part 2. And actually, while I'm still here sitting on RuneScape, one video idea I do have is to talk about some of the old novelization sort of tie-in novels that exist in the RuneScape world that kept coming up as advertisements when I was young. Let me know if that's something you want to see. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.